Welcome to the Three and Out podcast, where today we're diving outside of sports for the very first time as part of our Organized Confusion collection, where we touch on life topics covering all different aspects of young adulthood. This is something that we've talked about doing for a while now, and what better time to address these critical issues than in the midst of a pandemic that has ruptured many lives both physically and mentally. As many have lost their jobs for almost a full year now, including myself, it has led to tons of free time and lots of time to think, where are you in your journey? Why didn't I follow my dreams? 10 years ago, I had a plan, and here I am now, plan forgotten, abandoned, with regret and confusion circling my mind. To get a better idea of why, while mostly people in their early 20s abandon their dreams or guide themselves in a separate direction, we have licensed clinician in counseling, a Hamden, Connecticut native, Seton Hall alum, and Ed's sister, Karina Aponte.
Thanks.
How you doing today, Karina?
I'm pretty good. So I feel like you said it all. So yeah, from Hamden, Eddie's sister. Did my undergrad and master's at Seton Hall, and then moved to Baltimore. So this is where I live and work now. So yeah.
Awesome, Karina. Thank you so much for coming on. You have a very difficult job, and you're commended for taking up this role. How long have you been licensed?
I've been licensed since probably 2016. Yeah.
Do you 5 years later almost, do you enjoy this line of work?
I do. I really like it. I recently moved into private practice, which has made me love it even more.
Why is that?
I was working in an outpatient clinic. That atmosphere is just a little bit different. You get a lot of I don't know a nice way to say it, but a lot of substance abuse, a lot of addicts, a lot of mandated counseling people coming in. So they're not really seeking it. In private practice, you're getting people who really want help and want treatment. And so it just flows a lot different.
Awesome. So the three of us started talking about the idea of, why don't people do what they want to do? And as Matt alluded to in his intro, why don't people follow their dreams? Why are people scared to start a business? Why are people scared to post pictures? Why? So we kind of dove into that conversation amongst the three of us. So I want to kind of pose that question to you as somebody who's licensed, as somebody who's dealt with these kind of people and dealt these type of psychological issues. Why do you think people don't do what they really want to do?
So I think this is one of the questions that was kind of vague just because it could be divided in a lot of different ways. So the first thing I think of is fear, right? Which is pretty common, but then it's more of like that fear that people have is different for everyone, right? Is it like past trauma? Is it anxiety? Is it just how you grew up defining success? Like that varies for everyone. So
you could say it's the fear of failure, the fear of the unknown, right? The fear of what people might think of you.
Right. I mean, the definition of anxiety is the fear of the unknown.
And is there any research, I mean, I guess there is, since you touched on it already, that shows how things that happened to you as a child or as a young adult might affect your mental state and your anxiety, later on in life?
Yeah, there's so many studies. I would say, like, as cliche as it sounds, everything stems from childhood. Things stem even from the time that we're newborns and we don't even remember much. So when you ask the question like fear of failure, and I think one of the questions was, can that fear be something that you grew up with, right? Or that you learned? And I think so, right? There's some studies that find your brain is developing since the time you're newborn, right? And so every interaction you have is changing your brain chemistry, right? So for example, like let's say we have a kid and when he gets an F on a paper, his parents are like screaming at him, they're punishing him, all hell kind of breaks loose. That kid is now learning in his mind, like, if I do badly, I get in trouble, right? As he gets older, his parents aren't yelling at him anymore, right? So let's say he loses his job as an adult. No one's going to yell at him, but he's going to internalize that and then start beating himself up, right? And that's where we have that self-talk of like, I suck, I'm an idiot, I'm a failure, right? And all that negative, that self-talk stem from childhood.
All right,
Yeah.
so I want to stay on this subject then for just a second.
Mhm.
So that fear of failure, and I think about this a lot now because I have a 19-month-old. So there are times when he does something that I don't want him to do, and I catch myself starting to raise my voice, and it's very difficult not to do, right? Because your patience is just so thin. But I often think about this type of scenario where how is my yelling going to affect him later on in life? I have to figure out different ways to channel that. So when you get older, you have these things happen to you. You know, you have anxiety. How have you seen, or what do you recommend? How do you break away from that?
Break away from the anxiety.
From the fear of failure, from the fear of what other people think of you. Because like I was talking to Ed, and Ed said, we were all talking, and Ed said that one day he was just like, fuck it. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. He finally realized that it didn't really matter, you know, what other people thought. So how do you get to that point?
Right. So I would say, honestly, just processing it, right? And thinking about, where did this fear come from? And did I create this fear, or was this something I learned, right? Is this something I picked up along the way? Did someone put this in me? Like, where did it come from? Kind of having that self-compassion for yourself, you're going to start limiting that comparing to others, and you're going to start becoming more present and mindful. I think when you're present in your own life, that's when you start letting go of all of these, like, what are other people thinking about me? What am I doing? Because we're always moving, right? Especially with like social media, which is a lot of the stuff you guys asked. We're always constantly comparing. So being able to take a step back, and honestly, it's a lot of just not thinking, but challenging your thoughts, right? Like, go through that. When you have these thoughts of like, I'm a failure, what happened to the stream? Sit there and talk it out. Talk it out to yourself, to someone else, write it out. Just start to figure out, where did this come from? And you'll gain a lot of insight that way.
So speaking of social media, you brought it up and you kind of touched on it. How much of an impact do you think, or those studies show, social media have an impact on the way people perceive themselves?
There's a pretty big impact. So social media is like created in a way where it will become addicting, right? And there's actually studies that show the same part of our brain that lights up when we drink or smoke, engage in any substances, that same piece that lights up when we get a like, a comment, a retweet, whatever it may be. So it can become really addicting over time. And then kind of what a lot of your questions were about, which was like comparing, right? And that's so easy on social media because everyone's posting. It's also instant validation, right? It feels really good when someone's liking our photos, when people are looking at our profiles. Even if we say like we don't care, we're wired to care, humans, right? Social and emotional needs, that's part of our basic buildup. We can't really help that.
Matt, go ahead.
I feel like social media, like you might think that people are like looking at your stuff every day and like are so entwined with your life, but really like they don't really care. And that's like, I think is a big fear you have to get over personally, because like you might think like you guys or some people from 10 years ago are watching you and like, oh, this guy's not doing shit with his life or something like that. But really, they don't really care. So it's like that mental obstacle that you have personally is what needs to be addressed. And I know whenever I have like that kind of problem, I like to resort to like smoking weed because, it kind of masks your thoughts and like just it makes you forget about stuff for a lot. And my question is basically, is there any correlation with like weed being legal in certain states to helping people and then other places not? Like Connecticut, I know it's not legal, but out here in Nevada it is. Mm-hmm. So is there any correlation with that?
So I'll say like in my profession, we're having a really hard time trying to get people to kind of break away from that, because it's exactly what you said, right? Like I have these thoughts, they're really shitty. I don't want to deal with them. So I'm going to mask it really quick, right?
Yeah.
That's cool for temporary relief. But at some point you have to process where those thoughts are coming from. You really got to like tap in, because what happens is I have a lot of clients who are like, yeah, I just smoke and it's fine. I'm like, okay, yeah, but
that's what I do. I'll just like, if I have a problem, I'll just smoke a little bit or eat an edible, and I'm like, whatever. All right, I'll deal with that tomorrow morning. But then the next day comes and same thing.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just kind of a mask. And we can even talk about it in the sense of people who use marijuana for anxiety, right? Okay, let's say you get a medical card for anxiety, whatever. At the same time, like, you still need therapy, right? Even clients who are on antipsychotics, they still need therapy. The best line of treatment is always therapy and medication.
Gotcha. What do you think about like the pandemic, where everybody's been forced to kind of be at home and sit here, and many people lost their jobs and stuff? So how do you deal with that when you don't really have much else to do? You can't really go and see your friends. I mean, if you can, it's small group and you're kind of just stuck at home. How can you cope with, like,
especially in your situation where your entire job revolves around interacting with people for hours at a time?
Yeah, like when I'm at work, I'm talking to people all day. When I get home, I don't want to talk to anybody. I just want to chill.
Not like you're at a desk job where you're sitting on a computer. You talk to 2 people a day. Exactly.
Now I don't talk. I can go days without talking to anybody if I want to, or even seeing anybody. And it's probably not the best thing, but
yeah, that can't be healthy. Karina, touch on that a little bit.
It's absolutely not healthy at all. Yeah.
No, yeah, it's definitely not. So, as it sounds cliche to say, like, stay connected, because I feel like that's what everyone's been saying since the pandemic started, but we need to socialize, right? Like, again, humans are meant to socialize. We're meant to interact with others. We're not meant to be alone. And so since the pandemic started, cases of like depression have skyrocketed, especially with kids. And that's because kids don't get to socialize in school, right? They have a lot of socializing all day long. They're at school talking, right? Now they're home, not talking to any classmates. Same thing goes for adults though, right? So like, same way kids need that, you also need that. So staying connected, whether that's like video chats or phone calls versus texting, does actually make a difference. Sometimes just hearing someone's voice can bring some comfort. I would say another good way just to battle like any loneliness or depression is get some type of movement in your day, get some type of fresh air. I know there's been times where it's like, if I haven't left the house in like 4 days and I start going crazy, right? So even if that's just like stepping outside your front door, like, do that. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to like go out and party with a bunch of people to feel like normal again.
Doesn't that kind of put people in like, it comes around full circle, right? It's like a double-edged sword. You're in a pandemic, you have to stay connected. The easiest way to stay connected is obviously through social media.
Right.
So you kind of trying to eliminate the problem of interaction or non-interaction and staying connected, you create this other problem where you're constantly comparing yourself to other people. I think also for younger kids, you're going to create and you're going to see a lot more bullying now because everything's online. It's so much easier to be a bully to other kids online. What do you think about that?
I agree. I think one of the things I try to educate a lot of my clients on and parents is called a digital detox. And so that's going through all your social media feeds, right? If there's people where you're like, I compare myself a lot to you, mute them, unfollow them, delete them, like start following accounts that you make you feel good, right? And you can do that. You have control of your social media. And that's a really good way for you to stay connected in a healthy way and not necessarily feel like you're comparing, right?
So tell me a little about like our generation. We grew up kind of half playing outside with our boys, and then by like 11, 12, you're like inside playing video games. And social media starts coming like when we're in high school and all that. So we kind of know like half of the life prior to social media and what social media is, and what's the difference between like us and kids who just immediately get into it. Like my niece, she's 9, but she's all over Facebook doing all this stuff. And I don't know, like, how are their minds different than ours are because they're going through such a different experience than us.
I mean, for them, it's their norm though, right? Like, it's like you said, we didn't necessarily have this growing up. And so, yeah, I mean, there's so many studies coming out recently that's all about like the right amount of screen time that kids should have every day and like how much screen time should you give your kids? Because again, a kid's brain is constantly developing, right? And so I think the scary side of that is when I went back talking about that part of your brain that lights up with that, those notifications that you get from social media, that's really going to start impacting kids. And I think the biggest thing that I've seen is kids get a lot of validation off of social media.
I mean, that is one of the things I'm so scared of. I'm already trying to limit, especially right now, actually trying to limit screen time for Joey. But it's nearly impossible. He sees us on our phones. He's got the TVs. He's got FaceTime all the time because of a pandemic. So that every day there's somebody on the FaceTime. So he's got a screen in his face constantly. And it really bothers me.
Yeah. I think with the pandemic, it's been really hard, especially with younger kids, because you're right. Like their world now is like a phone in their face, right? Like this is how they're meeting their first family members. I think like the studies I saw said like 3 hours of screen time for ages like, I think it's like maybe 5 to 12. And then that starts to change. But it is definitely hard. I think one of the things I also noticed is like this is the only way kids are socializing right now outside of, again, no school. So I've had a lot of parents like ground their kids and take their phones away, and the kid is coming in like almost suicidal, and not because he's like I want my phone back, but because this kid's depressed. He's been depressed. He's lonely. Now you took away the one source of communication, and so it has been hard to talk with parents and be like, how can we find a compromise where like he's not feeling this lonely, but at the same time you can have your form of punishment.
Is that the? Oh, go ahead, Matt. Go ahead. Sorry.
Do you think with social media being so prominent nowadays, and I think personally the school system should be kind of redone to kind of teach you about just prepare you mentally for what
mental health courses. Yeah, right.
Do you think that should be added into like a curriculum, or there should be any drastic changes like that should happen like as soon as possible?
Yeah, I definitely think so, especially again with the pandemic happening. I do know in the past, maybe since I've started getting into this field, that school counseling has really shifted. Whereas like now they'll have school counselors go into classes and teach about mental health, almost in the same way where you would go to a health class once a week. So I think some schools are trying. It's probably still not seen as important. But I do think in the next like 10 years, there'll be a shift from that, just because I think this pandemic has really increased a lot of mental services in that way. I think it's brought a light to people where they're like, yeah, this kind of sucks. This is really hard. People who've never experienced any type of depression or anxiety before now are.
So that leads into my next question. When do you think it's appropriate to start prescribing medications? Do you think we become too reliant on medications?
I do. I think medications are prescribed before therapy is even recommended. So I mean, it varies, right? I mean, I know a good amount of primary care doctors now who are like not prescribing any mental health medications, right? They're like, go to a psychiatrist, go see a therapist first, which is good. That wasn't happening before. So I think they're trying. And it also depends on like what it is, right? If it's anxiety and depression, you shouldn't be on an antidepressant or anti-anxiety your whole life. Those are things that help you get through a tough time. And they work best with therapy, right? It's not something like an antipsychotic, which would be for like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, right? Like those are really severe chemical imbalances where your brain may never be able to align itself in that way. So you do need the medication. But what happens is people get the medication, they don't want to go to therapy. And so in 6 months to a year, hey, my medication's not working anymore. I need to increase. And a lot of doctors are like, okay, like that makes sense. But really, a lot of these symptoms going back, what's that core problem? That's what you figure out in therapy. And that's where you start moving forward.
Yeah, I kind of want to get back into the not following your career thing. I know we kind of just went deep dived into like a depression playing a big part into that. But,
Yeah.
you know, when you're getting out of college, you don't have much money. And you might have like a specific goal that you're trying to get, like somewhere in your, trying to be an announcer for sports or something. But you come out of college, you have a job that's paying you well, and you kind of just abandon that dream of going for it because you're afraid to give up the financial status that you currently have. So my question is it like a money decision to be hesitant more, or because you're comfortable and complacent and you just therefore you just stop following what you're going for? Is that something?
I think like one of the questions that comes to my mind is, are you happy being comfortable and complacent? Right? Because some people are like, I went to college, I got a good job, have my family, that's it, like I'm good. Other people are like, I hate this, I need more. Right? And so if you're not content with it, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think some of that is it's been drilled into our generation's heads that you go to college and you need a job right away. You start a family, buy a house immediately. Like this is all supposed to happen before 30.
Right.
Damn, I missed out.
Huge part of it.
Yeah, which is that also leads into fear of failure, right? And that's a society, which goes back to like, where did this come from? Society also plays a role in it. That's how we grew up. That's what was enforced in us. And so all of these things reinforce that fear. And going back to the money decision, it is hard because there reaches a point where we have to be logical, right? But knowing how much of your fear plays into that, because you could still make good money and say like, I'm going to save up money and then move into this new career, right? Or you plan for it. But if you're not planning, that may be because there's some fear there.
That's a lot of what I know some people find him cheesy, but it's a lot of what Gary Vee says, like about kids who come out of school and think, oh, I have to make 6 figures. He's like, if you're happy making 40 grand, stay at that job. Don't go to the job that's paying 6 figures if you're going to be miserable. You got to balance that out.
Yeah.
Do you find that when you're working with people, kind of to touch on this decision as to why like they did something or didn't do something, was it money, was it a family decision, etc., do you ever find that as you're, let's use the term, peeling back the onions on somebody, that you guys together come up with things that maybe they never realized?
No, yeah.
Is that's common?
Yeah, it's really common. I also work from like a trauma approach, and a lot of people are like, I've never experienced trauma. I didn't like get beat or sexually assaulted. Like I'm fine. Trauma is so many different things. And so that happens a lot where we'll peel back and I'm like, that must have been really hard. Where did this come from? Or how has this impacted you? And people make those connections themselves with very little like guidance from me. I just kind of help peel things back.
Interesting. And what advice do you have for people who have kind of fallen into this situation?
I would say it really starts with thinking about what you want, right? Like go back to what your dream was, create a timeline. Where did it shift from this and why? And how much of that was fear driven? If it is fear, I would say that probably stems from anxiety. And so talking to someone would probably be really helpful just to better peel back those layers and get some understanding.
Can you guys imagine how many, musicians and singers and actors and artists that we have missed out on probably because of this? It's pretty amazing. It makes you appreciate the ones who do put out albums and records and etc. Because you see even celebrities going through this, right? Celebrities get bullied on Twitter and they stay off, they get away from it just because people are just fucking haters.
Yeah, I see people every day like trying to still be like a rapper or something, and like kudos to them. Like I don't have the.
I mean, I think we go through this too, the three of us, right? Like we've been doing this podcast on and off now for 4 years, maybe.
Pretty much.
And we always say, oh, let's do this. We're really gonna do it this time. We're really gonna do it, and then something happens where we just stop. And then maybe it's because we get bored, but maybe we get bored because
I think it's because we're not getting like 100 likes or something like that, and we're kind of like, well, maybe no one's really listening to this, so why?
But we do. That's the weirdest part, is because we have the data that shows that it is listened to, right? It's just I think it's us mentally where we've gotten to the point where like, why are we doing this? Why,
funny, you think no one's listening, then you'll have 10 people text you and be like, oh, what happened?
Yeah, right. Where did it go?
Exactly.
You didn't like it. You didn't like hit like. You didn't.
Yeah. There was no comments anywhere.
It's the instant gratification again.
Just, like you said, yeah.
That feels really good. You guys aren't getting that, and so I think it might be discouraging you guys and just saying like.
It's that's subconscious too, right? It's like we're just conditioned. We're conditioned to think like that. Like if we didn't get all these likes and all these comments, that it must not be. I mean, why are we doing it at that point?
I did that with the fantasy football podcast I was doing for our league. 1 week I saw my likes or I saw my listens going down and down each week. So I was like, all right, fuck it, I'm not gonna do it anymore.
But that's
and
where
then the next day everybody's like, where's the podcast? And I'm like, oh shit.
That's where we need to be better, is we just need to keep grinding through it. If this is what we really want to do. Like, I don't give a shit if nobody listens to us interview Karina, because I enjoyed that. I'm enjoying this. I like to learn about this type of shit, especially now with a little boy and a family and everything like that. So for me, I'm learning to kind of do things, take the same advice and do things that I want to do. And this is something that I really wanted to do. I was pushing Ed hard for this at the beginning. Like, yeah, that was a great idea. Let's do it. Just because it's something that I really wanted to do.
Yeah, I'm going through it. So I just want to just hear like,
let's have a little session here with Matt right now. Peel the onions back on his ass.
The onions have been peeled. They don't smell very good.
I got the brown onions.
True.
Now, what advice though do you have for somebody like who's in Matt's situation, right? Lost their job, no clue when it's coming back.
And he's just naturally a person who's
he's naturally a people person, right?
Yeah.
So should he be outside? Should he still be, doing things that he wants to do? Should he take up a new hobby, go play tennis?
Yeah, honestly, I'm not even gonna lie. I've sat a lot of adults down and said, like, write me down everything you used to like to do as a kid. Like, what are things that you lost, right? Like, I used to love playing soccer. I gave that up, and I've like back and forth gone into that in adulthood because that's something that took me back into like a little Karina, and something that made me happy. So I'm sure Ed gets the same thing with when you play softball. Right?
Absolutely, he does. He lives for that shit.
Yeah, he does.
Shout out to Brand, free promo.
See, when everything started going down back in March and I lost my job, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. I got all this time off now. I'll be back to work in like 5 months when all this shit's over. I'll just hang out right now and just, do whatever. And then we're here fucking February 28th, almost a full year later, and nothing's really changed. And honestly, I had to my favorite part of my day, this is going to sound sad, is when I get to go on and play Call of Duty with my boys.
Yeah.
There's 3 people every day that are always there. We always get on the same time, and it's like nice interaction. So that's my way to talk to people. And I enjoy that because prior to that, I was probably just hitting the bong and watching reruns of basketball games or some shit. And my fucking cat's right there looking at me like, why are you fucking still here, dude?
Well, that
so,
I was gonna say too. It's like you have to keep a routine. Like if you don't have a routine, you just sit there. It's like your whole day is gonna go by, and eventually that just turns all into one day.
Right, and
So,
I think it's got to be like an enjoyable routine. You know what I mean? For people who are in the same situation, find the things that you like to do do the same thing every day.
Exactly.
Right, like incorporate. You have more now, so you can incorporate things that maybe you don't do as much, right? Like make yourself breakfast every morning. You probably don't have time to do that typically. Like, do something nice. And also, like when it goes back to doing things you enjoy, do them because you're getting validation from yourself, not because you want validation from others. So like with the podcast, if the podcast brings you guys happiness and joy and you feel good about it, let that drive you, not the likes.
It's just
So,
our
yeah,
excuse to
that's a great
FaceTime each
point.
other.
That's a great point, Karina. I'm gonna take that serious. I am. I'm gonna take that to heart. So next time Ed, Matt, like, nah, I can't today. I can't today. I can't tomorrow. I'm just gonna do it myself.
Whenever I say I can't, I'm lying because I have all the time in the world.
Guy tells me he's at the store this morning. He accidentally FaceTimes me and he's on his bed.
I was at the store. I got home.
Oh, okay.
I was only at the store for like 3 minutes.
Karina, anything else you would like to add before we let you go?
I don't think so. Do you have any questions for me, Ed? I feel like you were very quiet.
Yeah, how the fuck are we related?
That's a great question.
True.
Childhood's a lot. I've like processed it all out.
Thank you so much, Karina. I don't have any other questions. What is your Instagram handle, just in case anybody wants to get a hold of you? Just Another Therapist on Instagram. Reach out to her. She was kind enough to come on today, give us a couple minutes. Very insightful, very educational, especially for me with a young child. Matt's going through his thing. Ed is your brother, so of course he always wants to hear what you have to say.
Well, thanks, guys. I'll talk to you guys soon.
All right, thank you so much.
Peace.
All right, how do you guys think that went?
I think that went splendid.
Did you learn a lot? I thought it was good. I think we touched on a lot of the social media stuff, which I think is the biggest driving force. But to me, it's just so hard to kind of try to teach people to get away from that right now when it's really the only way to kind of stay connected. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I deleted my Facebook.
I did too, and it was the most
like
great. Refreshing thing you could have ever done.
My addiction is Twitter. I can't get off Twitter, and Twitter is a toxic place.
Yeah, but Twitter, you're not really comparing yourself. That's where I think it's different, right? Facebook and Instagram, you're seeing. It's all visual.
Instagram definitely.
Twitter is more just
definitely what you make of it.
Which one?
Twitter.
Yeah, but I don't find myself comparing you to
no.
Twitter,
But I'm saying
you know?
if you're one of these people who's into politics and you want to sit there and follow fucking Ted Cruz, you're going to drive yourself fucking crazy.
Yeah, right. That's actually absolutely true. All right. Well, I thought it went well. I thought we learned a lot. I hope viewers appreciate that and appreciate the insight, and hopefully they reach out to her. And
yeah, if anyone who's watching this wants us to touch on any other subject that maybe they're feeling, let us know. Maybe we can get that done for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, make sure you follow us on all our social media platforms. We're on Facebook, YouTube,
Twitter. We got a new website coming soon. It's going to have some exclusive Matty B blog posts that you won't find anywhere else. I promise. They're all his.
Some betting stuff too. NBA King right here.
All right. Anything else we want to touch on? Go like us, subscribe on all the podcast, Spotify's, Apple Podcasts. Subscribe. Hopefully this.
Check out our new artwork.
Yeah, look at that, huh? Nicely done. So the guy got to shave some LBs off of me. We'll be
who drew that? Shout him out.
All right, so the guy who did this is my boy Big Mike. His Instagram handle is Another Original Custom with a K.
At Another Original Custom with a K.
Yes.
Got it.
Dope artwork.
We love it.
Got some little graphic design work. He's got some pretty dope shit he drew.
We'll add him as a sponsor on the site.
For sure.
All right, we out of here. Until next time. Life is a series of hellos and goodbyes. This time it's goodbye.
Farewell.
That's how Michael K ends his shows. It's a Billy Joel song. All right, we out of here. Peace.